Good morning, Alex and friends. I'm Grace. Today is Wednesday, July 23rd, 2025, and you're listening to Alex's News. In Riverside today, you can expect a comfortable high of 84.4 degrees, with temperatures dipping to a low of 66.1 degrees overnight, making for pleasant conditions. Coming up on Alex's News, we'll explore the complex reasons behind the current negotiations between Russia and Ukraine, and what has brought their representatives to the table in Istanbul. We'll examine the potential implications of these crucial talks. Then, we investigate why health insurance expenses for residents across California are set to see a significant and concerning increase, and what this could mean for the state's residents. All these important stories and more are just ahead on Alex's News. Stay tuned. We begin today with crucial diplomatic efforts unfolding in Istanbul, Turkey, where Russian and Ukrainian delegations are engaged in a third round of direct ceasefire talks. For more, our reporter Ethan. Ethan, what's happening?
Grace, it's critical. These high-stakes discussions began last night, July 23, 2025, at the Sirgan Palace in Istanbul. Ukraine's delegation is led by Rustem Umerov, while Russia's is headed by presidential aide Vladimir Medinsky. The primary focus is today's engagement, attempting to find a diplomatic path forward.
What are the core demands for each side? It sounds like a difficult diplomatic dance.
It certainly is, Grace. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky prioritizes humanitarian issues like the return of prisoners of war and Ukrainian children. He also seeks to prepare for a future summit and insists on a full, unconditional 30-day ceasefire as a precondition. Russia, conversely, demands Ukraine's neutrality, a significant reduction of its military capabilities, and the formal ceding of occupied territories, specifically Donetsk, Luhansk, Zaporizhzhia, and Kherson.
With such diametrically opposed positions, are there any expectations of a breakthrough this time around?
Expectations are unfortunately very low, Grace. Kremlin spokesman Dmitry Peskov stated it is, quote, hardly possible in the current situation, end quote, to expect any, quote, miraculous breakthroughs, end quote. The previous two rounds, in May and June, achieved some progress on prisoner exchanges but failed to secure any ceasefire. As of today, July 23, 2025, no verified outcomes or official statements regarding specific agreements have been released.
Ethan, it's interesting these talks are happening given President Putin's recent strong rhetoric. How do we reconcile his tough talk with his delegation now sitting at the negotiating table?
That's a perceptive point, Grace. Putin has recently used harsh language, questioning negotiations with, quote, terrorists, end quote, after Ukrainian attacks. However, analysts see this as multi-layered. His rhetoric is often political posturing, aimed at domestic audiences. Yet, Medinsky's presence indicates a practical need to maintain communication for de-escalation, or limited agreements like prisoner swaps. It offers Moscow flexibility.
And how is former U.S. President Donald Trump's recent, quote, ultimatum, end quote, impacting the Kremlin's approach to these negotiations?
It's a significant factor, Grace. Around July 15, 2025, Trump reportedly issued a, quote, 50-day ceasefire ultimatum, end quote, threatening 100% tariffs on Russia if no peace deal is reached by early September. That's about 50 days from today, September 11, 2025. Kremlin spokesman Peskov called this, quote, quite serious, end quote. As ABC News has uncovered, some Russian state media commentators even view this 50-day window as an opportunity for Russia to intensify military actions for a stronger negotiating position.
These talks are taking place against a backdrop of severe military escalation. What's been happening on the ground recently? It sounds like things are really striking a nerve.
It's incredibly tense, Grace. Between July 20th and 21, nearly 300 Ukrainian drones, with 60 targeting Moscow's core, caused widespread chaos. The Los Angeles Times reports this exposed Russia's vulnerability and caused a, quote, national spiritual tremor, end quote. In direct retaliation, Russia launched major air assaults. On July 21st, 426 drones and 24 missiles hit Ukraine. Today, July 23rd, Another 71 drones targeted regions like Dnipropetrovsk, causing civilian casualties, with 2 killed and 30 injured in 24 hours. Russian missiles also destroyed 3 critical railway hubs in Lviv, vital for NATO aid.
A truly grim picture. Finally, Ethan, what about the broader humanitarian concerns and the vital issue of military aid for Ukraine?
Humanitarian concerns persist, Grace, with Ukrainian ex-prisoners of war sharing accounts of terrible treatment. Military aid is crucial. Germany plans 5 Patriot air defense systems, and NATO allies are working to deliver more. However, the freezing of $61 billion in U.S. military aid has significantly reduced Ukraine's daily artillery consumption. The future of this conflict hinges heavily on these Istanbul negotiations.
Ethan, thank you for expertly breaking down this incredibly complex and concerning situation. We'll be keeping a close eye on any developments from Istanbul. And that was our first story of the morning. Stay with us, we'll be right back with more news after the break. Welcome back. For our second story this morning, we're turning our attention to a looming financial storm brewing for millions of Californians. The state is bracing for a profound and immediate increase in health insurance costs, directly attributed to a new budget bill signed into law by President Donald Trump. Here to help us navigate this complex issue is our seasoned reporter, Chloe. Chloe, this sounds like a real premium problem for residents. Can you break down what's happening?
Grace, it certainly is a significant concern that could leave many Californians feeling unwell financially. At the heart of this issue is the expiration of enhanced federal subsidies that have dramatically lowered health insurance premiums and expanded coverage under the Affordable Care Act, or ACA. These subsidies are set to expire at the end of 2025, meaning that for open enrollment in November, Californians buying health plans through Covered California will face much higher bills. It's not that the new GOP budget bill is actively cutting them off prematurely. According to CommonwealthFund.org and GetInsured.com, it simply isn't including a provision to extend them further.
So these subsidies were always meant to be temporary? Can you tell us more about their origin and why they're now expiring?
That's right, Grace. These enhanced federal subsidies were initially a temporary measure. They were first introduced by the American Rescue Plan Act, or ARPA, in March 2021, as reported by KHAFinancial.com and CBSNews.com. This act aimed to make health insurance more affordable during the height of the COVID-19 pandemic. They expanded eligibility to people earning more than 400% of the federal poverty level and increased aid for those already eligible. They were originally set to expire at the end of 2022, but the Inflation Reduction Act of 2022 extended them for an additional 3 years, pushing their expiration to the end of 2025, as confirmed by KFF.org and CommonwealthFund.org.
And what has been the impact of these subsidies on health insurance coverage nationwide?
They've been incredibly effective, Grace. In 2024, approximately 19.7 million Americans were receiving these enhanced premium tax credits. That's more than double the 9.6 million who were subsidized in 2020. The primary function of these subsidies was to cap the amount an individual or family had to pay for a benchmark plan at 8.5% of their income, providing critical financial relief and leading to record-high enrollment, according to FamiliesUSA.org. The Congressional Budget Office, or CBO, estimates that making these subsidies a permanent fixture would cost anywhere from $335 billion to $383 billion over a decade, as cited by House.gov and KFF.org.
Now, let's bring it back to California. What kind of financial hit are residents looking at once these subsidies vanish?
The impact on California will be dramatic. The LAist, in an article by Kristen Huang of CalMatters, reported on July 22, 2025, that nearly 90% of California enrollees receive federal subsidies. Without this enhanced support, premiums are expected to soar. On average, premiums will increase by a staggering 66% or an additional $101 per month starting next year. For lower-income individuals earning less than 400% of the federal poverty level, they're projected to pay an average of $191 more monthly. And here's a kicker. Grace, over 170,000 middle-income enrollees in California will completely lose all financial assistance, as detailed by the LAist.
That is a substantial increase for many families. Are there real-world examples of how this will affect people?
Absolutely. The LAist article featured Heather Altman, a Long Beach environmental consulting business owner. Her monthly premium for a gold plan has already increased by 222% over the past decade, from $356 to $1,147 for less comprehensive coverage. She now fears she won't be able to afford insurance and is contemplating seeking employment solely for benefits, noting her premiums have risen over 11% annually, significantly outpacing the general inflation rate.
That's certainly a tough pill to swallow. Beyond just the cost, what are the broader ramifications of this change?
The consequences extend far beyond higher premiums, Grace. The nonpartisan CBO estimates that nearly 4 million people nationwide would drop coverage due to these cost increases. For California, Covered California projects 600,000 residents will lose their insurance due to increased costs and new enrollment complexities, as reported by the LAist. This mass exodus, particularly by healthier individuals, will leave a sicker risk pool, leading to even higher premiums for those who remain insured. The CBO estimates an additional 7.9% increase for benchmark silver plans due to this adverse selection, again according to the LAist.
And I understand there are also some administrative hurdles being introduced.
That's correct. The GOP budget bill also introduces several administrative barriers, set to begin in 2028, making enrollment and continued coverage more difficult. These include more complicated enrollment and verification procedures and the elimination of automatic re-enrollment, which currently benefits about 70% of enrollees. There's also a prohibition of financial assistance for people signing up outside the end-of-year open enrollment period and for certain immigrant groups, including legal refugees. Finally, there's a new requirement for people who inaccurately predict their income to repay all subsidies received, rather than a capped amount, as outlined by the LAist. The Merced focus also highlights concerns that these changes could pose an ongoing threat to Medi-Cal services.
So what's being done at both the state and federal levels to try and mitigate this impending cost surge?
There's a flurry of activity, Grace, though the path forward is murky. Federally, Democrats are advocating for an extension, but a permanent one, estimated to cost hundreds of billions of dollars, faces strong Republican opposition, who view it as a, quote, never-ending cycle of rising premiums and federal bailouts, according to Politico.com and healthinsurance.org. While some bipartisan talks are reportedly taking place, as HealthcareDive.com and CBSNews.com have noted, a full extension through the Republican-controlled Congress remains uncertain. Covered California has also consistently urged Congress to act, warning of premium spikes and a potential exodus of healthy individuals from the market, as highlighted by CoveredCA.com.
And on the state level, is California preparing for the worst?
Indeed, California is actively exploring state-led solutions. A key proposal involves the revival of a state-run premium subsidy program, which would utilize funds from the Healthcare Affordability Reserve Fund. State officials acknowledge these state funds wouldn't fully replace the multi-billion-dollar federal investment, but they're considered a crucial step to prevent a catastrophic drop in healthcare affordability, as detailed by ca.gov and health-access.org. Governor Newsom's administration has been vocal, and his revised state budget for 2025-2026 maintains commitments to healthcare affordability, though these efforts may not fully counteract the steep premium increases without federal action, according to ca.gov and sacb.com. Covered California has also been actively engaged in advocacy and consumer outreach, working to inform consumers about the changing landscape as reported by coveredca.com.
It sounds like Californians are facing some very uncertain times when it comes to their healthcare. Thank you, Chloe, for shedding some much-needed light on this complex issue.
My pleasure, Grace.
We'll continue to follow this story closely. Here are some other headlines. The Trump administration's Department of Labor is looking to give businesses a break, but critics say it's workers who might get broken. The department has proposed more than 60 rule changes to slash what it calls unnecessary burdens on companies. Labor Secretary Lori Chavez DeRemer says the goal is to foster economic growth, but labor unions argue the rollbacks will endanger workers. Among the most significant changes, a rule extending minimum wage and overtime to 3.7 million home healthcare workers could be carried away. In a move that isn't exactly shedding light on the issue, the Occupational Safety and Health Administration, or OSHA, is also considering rescinding a requirement for adequate lighting at construction sites. Other proposals would undo recent protections for migrant farm workers and roll back anti-discrimination rules for federal contractors. Supporters applaud the deregulation, but advocacy groups like the AFL-CIO are calling it a quote, barrage of attacks on workers that will suppress wages. The rules are not yet final and must go through a public comment period. Meanwhile, the United States is playing a game of international hokey-pokey with UNESCO, announcing its intent to withdraw from the cultural agency for a third time. The administration cited anti-Israel bias and the promotion of woke divisive causes for the exit, which reverses a decision by the Biden administration to rejoin just 2 years ago. The U.S. first left in 1984 under President Reagan, rejoined in 2003, and left again in 2017 under President Trump before its 2023 return. UNESCO's Director General expressed deep regret over the decision, which will have a significant financial impact on the organization. While the 26 U.S. World Heritage sites like the Statue of Liberty are safe, the U.S. will no longer be able to nominate new sites for inclusion. In Washington, some lawmakers are changing the channel on public broadcasting. Congress has passed a bill rescinding $1.1 billion in funding for the Corporation for Public Broadcasting, or CPB. President Trump is expected to sign the bill. Proponents argue that outlets like NPR and PBS exhibit political bias, but critics say this isn't just static for big city stations. It could create a complete blackout in rural areas. Stations in Appalachia and dozens of Native American communities, which rely on federal funds for over half their budgets, are now at risk of going off the air, jeopardizing not only local news, but also their critical role in the emergency alert system. In the world of sports, a major policy hurdle has been set. The United States Olympic and Paralympic Committee has barred transgender women from competing in women's sports, aligning with an executive order from President Trump. The USOPC stated it has an, quote, obligation to comply with federal expectations. This move puts the U.S. at odds with the International Olympic Committee, which allows individual sports federations to set their own rules. The National Women's Law Center condemned the decision, saying the committee is, quote, sacrificing the needs and safety of its own athletes. And finally, a legal battle is brewing as a coalition of 21 states has sued the Trump administration over new rules restricting immigrant access to a host of federally funded programs. The lawsuit challenges an executive order that curbs access to services like Head Start, community food banks, and mental health care for undocumented immigrants and some legal visa holders. The attorneys general argue the administration acted unlawfully, while the White House maintains the move is necessary to ensure taxpayer-funded benefits are reserved for American citizens. That's all we have for now. Today's episode was made by Alexander King with Claude Sonnet 4.0, Gemini Pro 2.5, Gemini Flash 2.5, and Google Cloud Text-to-Speech. I hope you have a great day. I'll see you tomorrow, Alex.